And now, I'd like to present today's speakers. Victoria Wu, PhD, is a lecturer at Stanford University and an entrepreneur with more than 25 years of experience in startups, international management, and academia. Victoria has devoted the past decade to bridging academia and business by co-designing custom executive programs at INSEAD and Harvard, where she helped Fortune 500 clients curate learning journeys for C-suite leaders and high-potential managers. In these roles, Victoria has also facilitated dialogue and cooperation among worldwide business partners, alumni, and clients. Since returning from a decade working in Asia, Victoria has served as a mentor for Blackbox.vc, a non-profit organization serving the global entrepreneurial ecosystem, and as an advisor for early-stage startups. Victoria is now working on her 6th startup, which is focused on increasing engagement and the sense of community among hourly workers. Joining Victoria today is Lynda Smith, a lecturer in global entrepreneurial marketing at Stanford University and a marketing and sales executive with more than 25 years of experience. Lynda has spent the last 15 years in high technology products and services as the SVP of marketing, or CMO, for a number of companies, including Genesis Telecommunication Laboratories, Nuance, Genpact, and Jive Software. In these roles, Lynda has successfully led virtually every marketing function, including product marketing, product management, corporate marketing, field marketing, lead generation, channel marketing, marketing research, and strategy development, all driving marketing in the US, Europe, India, China, and other major markets. Lynda has an undergraduate degree in liberal arts from Simpson College and an MBA from the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. Her current area of interest is what is happening in this next generation of marketing, where digital media and social networks are combining to reshape the art and science of marketing. Professors, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Just a little something about what we do at MSNE 271. Global entrepreneurial marketing is effectively what it is. It starts with global, then entrepreneurial, then marketing. What we do is we introduce the core marketing concept to bring a new product or service to market, but also help you build it to a success. We go towards both entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs. From the poll, I saw that 45% of you had said that you're starting your own companies or running your own companies. So I think that would be a wonderful, what we call product market fit for you for the course and what your needs are. The course is basically going to be team-based and focused on delivering a go-to-market strategy. So without further ado, let me introduce Lynda.
Yeah, great to be with all of you, and very excited that you have interest in the Global Entrepreneurial Marketing Program. I've been very excited to be a part of this program now for over 15 years. And what's exciting about it to me is the fact that we help people who perhaps have never had any formal education or formal background in the marketing area get all the basic elements that they need to ultimately create a go-to-market plan for their company, for their new product, their new offering, as well as if they're in an organization, understand what's going on with marketing in a way that they can really contribute. So what we're going to be going through today is what makes marketing in an entrepreneurial environment different. We will also be diving into some marketing fundamentals, just so you have an idea of how we kind of think about marketing. And then finally, we'll do a high-level view of what a go-to-market strategy actually includes. At one point, they said, can you tell them everything you would tell them that they would learn in the GEM program? And it's like, I'd need like 20 sessions to do it, because that is what GEM is all about. So jumping in then, just a little bit of background. You heard my bio. Seems it was just a little bit dated. But the last company that I was formerly in an operational role, Chief Strategy Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, was Twilio, which was a platform based for developers, which was an amazing experience. And now I am actively advising and consulting for a number of companies. One that is especially fun is Misty, which is a robotics company based on AI and some really deep learning techniques. So super fun. And I will bring that into the classroom. So you have an opportunity to learn a little bit about what we're doing with robotics at the same time as learning what we're doing with entrepreneurial marketing there. Let me turn it back over to Vic for her to give you her background.
Perfect. Thank you, Lynda. So my background basically are 3 major buckets, and starts with the corporate America, so to speak. and academia and the entrepreneurial ecosystem. What I bring to the table is just both success and failure in a number of entrepreneurial ventures. As mentioned, this is my 6th startup, and I would say there have been ups and downs in each of those. I would imagine that the most I can bring to the table that is when we raised $17 million, and frankly, I think without product market fit, it was not actually a good thing. And also, I bring to the table a lot of mentorship that I've had a lot of experience advising small and early startups and understanding a global perspective as I lived in Asia for, I guess, a latter part of the decade. And without spending too much time, you'll get to know us throughout the quarter if you were to join our class. But we will go straight into the agenda as we realize that time is short.
Awesome. But the other, one other comment is, one thing you'll find with the class is it is very interactive. We love to have you be able to engage with us, that you have an opportunity to ask all the questions that you have, but also learn from each other, because we have a fair number of people in the program that either have experience having been in an entrepreneurial organization, or they're just starting to get into one. So lots of opportunity to learn from your peers. So let's jump to the next slide. And I thought it might be useful to first just start off with what is marketing, because a lot of the people that come into the GEM program actually have never had a marketing course or a marketing activity before. And so when you think about marketing, there's some wonderful definitions out there. When I first did the Google search on these, it cracked me up how many different ways marketing has been defined. This one, from being a consumer, actually resonated with me. Marketing is helping your customers understand how much they need something they never knew they needed, which quite frankly is how you sometimes feel as a consumer. But the one I really believe in is the next one, if you'll flip it over, Vic, is this one that is much broader. Marketing today is finally customer focused. Social media made that happen. Markets are once again conversations. Marketing is about knowing the market, creating the right product, to Vic's point about product market fit, creating desire for that product, and then letting the right people know you have it. When I think of marketing, I think of it as a very broad end-to-end process, which I'll touch on in a moment. But it is this idea of coming up with right ideas and then really moving them to market by having the right go-to-market plan. And again, that's what we want to make sure you leave with after being a part of the GEM program. Let's click over to the next slide. All right, so we've just talked about what marketing is. What does it mean to be entrepreneurial marketing? Well, the reality is it is based on all the fundamentals of traditional marketing. And we're going to give you a sampling of that across the course. But it is also about this mindset that comes. It's defined by this orientation. And if you've ever been in an entrepreneurial organization, and as the poll showed, there's a fair number of you, about 45%, that are actually starting your own companies, there is this whole idea of it's about moving fast. You don't have time to stand still. It's about being agile, being able to pivot and constantly change what you're doing from a marketing perspective. It's about leveraging the passion that the organization has, because that's so much of what people buy in the early days. And it's also about being creative, which I'll touch on in a moment. Now, if you're someone already in a formal organization and you want to be a part of innovation, what we oftentimes call entrepreneurial, all of that applies as well. Even though the organization may be older, maybe more mature, whenever you're bringing that new idea, that new concept to market, it goes back to all the principles of being in that entrepreneurial environment, moving fast, being agile, the list we just covered. It's also focused on establishing a company in an industry or a product in a segment, and it's about growing rapidly. So all of those things change the way you fundamentally think about marketing, because marketing very traditionally has more of a planning horizon to it. We get comfortable with longer windows of being able to define campaigns, of being able to put things out into the market. You can't do it when you're in this entrepreneurial mode. Now, there are challenges to that point of being creative. Most entrepreneurial ventures face this unusual thing called no one knows my company or my product or my service. Usually you're in a very early stage of product or service, so you're trying to make sure it does have that product market fit, and if not, how do we move forward? And then a lot of times your resources are very modest, which just comes back to, again, you're in that very early stage. You're not necessarily earning revenue yet, so you have to figure out how to market in the most creative way that you can. All
So
right.
just very quickly add to
Please.
that, in my journey as an entrepreneur anyway, I'm always short on time. Things should have happened yesterday, and short on cash. So this is exactly what we're bringing to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought it'd also be interesting to share with you. I get 3 questions very commonly. If you can jump to the next slide. I get 3 questions from the entrepreneurial organizations that I advise and that I work with. First one is, when do I hire for marketing? The next one is, well, who do I hire first, when, and then what level do I hire in at? So I thought it might be interesting just to touch on that briefly here before we get into the marketing fundamentals. Let's start off with, when do I hire for marketing? You can switch to the next slide. Typically, people start investing in marketing when the product is ready for that broader use, versus just that feedback loop, which is really important in the early days. But now you want to get the word out, and you want people to really start coming to you and wanting to learn more. You hire for marketing when revenue is now or the key objective. You have to, or building up numbers in a network, but now really you're being looked at as, what is that key result that we need to have? Well, it's either more money or it's more users of a platform, but it's when you need to really now start generating mass. And it's also when that current staff you have just can't cover the marketing effort. What I've found in some wonderful new startups is it just happens to be that the founder had a little bit of marketing, or someone they hired had done marketing before, and they're actually in the earliest days able to handle it. But now there will be a point where, oh, wow, yeah, we need someone who's really done this before. Let's start looking at bringing in the staff. Next question, if you could switch over, really comes in then to, who do I hire? And this is just my point of view, but it's worked for me. Generalists are golden. In those earliest days when you're hiring for marketing, finding someone that has pretty broad experience, not just focused on one area, can be super helpful. I also find that the marketing model drives it. We'll talk a little bit about the marketing model in a moment, but sales-driven revenue, well, then you want someone who knows lead generation, sales enablement. If it's marketing-driven revenue, then you want someone who knows brand and campaign orientation. If it's about a platform play, you want someone who typically knows developers. And if it's about growth hacking, that's the model you're following in marketing. Then you want someone who is uber smart on the online and digital side of things. Hire someone who can get from A to Z with a lot of help. You don't have time to train these folks. Also find someone who doesn't need an army reporting to them, because we're talking lean, moving fast. And then if you have a technically steep product, find someone who's technically steep as a marketer.
Yeah.
And then the last question, which is, what level do I hire in at? Culture matters. Avoid title creep too early, and then you don't enable your best early starters to be a part of the company. Experience level doesn't necessarily mean title. And then finally, churn will happen. Some people are just better in a beginning company. These are also some of the topics we'll talk about during GEM. As you're thinking about the team that you need to form, and Vic is amazing when it comes to team building and understanding organizational design. We'll talk about this as well as we go through the program, so you can be thinking about how you might have to bring that marketing team together for your business.
Yes, and to that end, I do believe that in both research and my own experience, there will be different teams at different stages of an entrepreneur endeavor. So therefore, keeping these things in mind, that experience does not actually equal title, is really important, as your first marketing CMO may not remain as CMO for a much, much larger company.
All right, so I wanted to give you just a little bit of view of how to think about entrepreneurial marketing. Now we're going to dive into just a few marketing fundamentals. And these are fundamentals that we leverage across the program. The first one on the next slide really comes back to this idea of this end-to-end view of marketing. It's an E-to-E process. Now, in a lot of companies, all they think about marketing is that kind of fourth column over. It's just about demand generation. How do you get me leads? How do you get me more customers? But in the most effective companies that I've been a part of or I've advised, they take a much broader view of marketing. Marketing is about the strategy and planning, which you'll see come out as we talk about the go-to-market plan you would put together. They do own product in some capacity. If they don't have product management reporting into them directly, they're an active participant in defining that product or service. Demand generation is naturally a part of it. You have to have that. And then also now this idea of the customer marketing, making sure that you have retention. Boy, and I can tell you in startups, one of the biggest challenges that they have when they go for their next funding round is, what was your retention rate? So if you don't think about that early on, how do we take care of our customers? It's not going to happen. marketing plays a role across all of these parts of the spectrum. And we'll show you through the various sessions how you do that. If you'll jump to the, please, Vic, and then jump to the next slide.
This adding to that is really reducing the friction of how you get your customer to interact with you and to, either is switching over or staying with you over time. Is a constant test of this iterative way of thinking about how you market and what exact product is going to be. So resonates with the end-to-end view of marketing.
Yeah. Now, we are going to talk just a little bit about more of that demand generation column, because it is so central to when you're an early startup. It is one of the things you invest in, probably the earliest in marketing, the whole area of this demand generation. Now, I joke with a lot of our students who come in from a very technical background, and I'll ask a question the first day: how many of you, believe in marketing? What do you think marketing is? And I always get the feedback, oh, it's that fluffy stuff. And it's my personal mission, and every time we run the GEM program, is for people to leave with a great respect for the marketing function, because there really is a science around it. But part of what you're doing in demand generation that is a science is you're moving people through what we call this hierarchy of effects. Taking people from being totally unaware of a product all the way through to where there's an action, whether that's purchase or sign up or whatever the right conversion is. And there are layers to building that natural understanding, getting them to that purchase point. They have to be aware. Then you have to feed them with enough knowledge that they understand who you are, what you stand for, and you can get to that point where they actually like you, and then have a preference over the competition, and then finally they get the conviction that they want to engage with you. And there are marketing tactics that we use at each stage of this. Now, some people will also call this the funnel, taking people from awareness to consideration to action. You hear that a lot within a sales organization perspective. So we'll talk through the program as well about how do you get people through this hierarchy of effects. And again, in a startup world, big chance out there that no one knows who you are. So you need to really pay attention. How do you get people there?
Next. This profession called marketing is really a bit of psychology, ethnography, data scientist, decision making. So it's a lot that's encompassed into this thing called marketing, which is fascinating.
Yeah, and that's a great tee up for the next slide. One of the things, and I actually did in my education, did have a lot of psychology courses, a lot of sociology courses. And one of the things that really resonated that is when you're thinking about marketing, what you're really trying to do is help people form these perceptions. And so the way a perception is formed is first it comes into this idea of a sensory registry. That's when you've just first been exposed. You saw the billboard, you saw the ad, but it doesn't stick. I mean, there's just something back there that is familiar if you see it again. And what we're doing with this marketing process is strengthening that signal so we can get into that short-term memory. And if we as marketers have done our job really well, we get all the way into that long-term memory where the real value comes, because then you get word of mouth. Someone comes up and says, hey, I'm looking for X, and a person goes, oh yeah, there's this company out there I've heard of, they're awesome, you should go check them out. So part of this marketing effort is tapping into the psychology of people, getting into their minds. And if you turn to the next slide, it is not an easy thing to do. The average human attention span is only 7 seconds, and that's 1 second less than a goldfish. So a marketer's job is not necessarily an easy job.
Yeah, it's kind of like the attention economy that we're all vying for people's attention. And as a new product is a little bit hard to do unless you do a really good job of planning your marketing.
Absolutely. Now, to try to help with that whole idea of how do you get into the mind of someone, how do you work through the stages of sensory, short-term, long-term, we use a tactic that we call, or a strategy we call, integrated marketing, which is really this idea that you have to use a whole variety of tactics to be able to do it. And that's because we all learn differently. We all have different attention spans for different types of content, different types of media. So we actually will spend 3 of the sessions talking about demand creation and getting you familiar enough with each of the tactics that are out there. And there are many more than what you see on these bubbles. It's just a sampling of them, so that you can start thinking about your own company, about your own work and your own target audience, and really starting to think about what's going to be most effective to get people through that hierarchy and get into that long-term memory. All right, so we'll also walk through this in the program. There are different types of marketing. And these are kind of the old traditional words for it, if you will. There's the idea of B2B marketing, and this is really about catering to businesses. Here, your target audience is a business as well as the buyer that is internal to that company. So if you're selling an enterprise software product, chances are you want to get to the person who actually uses it, but probably also there's a CIO that's involved. There's a CFO involved that you have to include. So multiple audiences that you're catering to inside. Then you have the world of B2C. And this is really about catering to consumers. We all are the recipient of that, target audience, the consumer. One we hear a lot about now, a lot of startups, a lot of entrepreneurial efforts going after is the idea of B to B to C. Here you're catering to the businesses that cater to consumers. Oftentimes you also have to cater to the consumers, so you get both the push and the pull. And your target audience then tends to be the business, the buyer as an individual again, and the consumer. And then the last one you're seeing a lot more activity around in terms of types of marketing is this idea of B to D, which is about catering to developers. Here you're really focusing on that individual developer to get them excited about what you're doing. And there are different ways that you approach marketing in each of these types. And so we'll be going through that as well, from figuring out what the right product market fit is, to how you're creating that demand, how do you create great experiences for customer loyalty. We'll make sure it relates back to each of these types of marketing.
And to that end, there are instances where you may have multiple markets. So your customer may be one of 5 different customer types. What we'll be using are some cases that will be underlying all the different business models and illustrate how other people have done it, for instance, in the past, and some new ways and novel ways of thinking about being creative about marketing to so many different constituencies.
Yeah, and one of the things that both Vic and I will work very hard is bringing in our own experience as well. So one of the things I love about this program is because I'm actually a hands-on practitioner even today. I love sharing what I'm doing, getting your feedback on it, but trying to bring in those real world examples as well from my own past experience. All right, touching on that idea of platforms. So when we talk about the B2D play with developers, generally what you'll find is it does surround this idea of platform plays, which is the fact that we've now all realized that sometimes the greatest source of innovation is outside the walls of your own organization or company. We'll also be talking about platform plays, not only from the perspective of developers, but how you build up a platform play so that you've got the chicken and egg thing you're trying to solve in terms of, okay, for this platform to be effective, I need both of these types of audiences. How do I bring them both in? So we'll be spending some solid time on platform plays, which you see more and more companies adopting. All right. Going to another way to look at all of this. So I offered up the traditional types of marketing, B2B, B2C. Through my experience, one of the other things that I've realized is that, wow, and I hate to say it, I'm dating myself, this whole thing called the internet changed my world. E-commerce changed my world. And what you start finding is because e-com is a vehicle for not only B2C, but B2B, B2B2C, that if a product is hard to convey the value for what the price tag is, or it's hard to get started and running, then you have to have humans involved, salespeople involved. It doesn't matter if you're B2B or B2C. Think about any phone plan. The reason why so many of the carriers have pop-up stores, have full-fledged stores is you go to their website and trying to figure out what rollover minutes mean and how many family members can, there's so much complication in a plan, you have to talk to a human. That's a B2C company, but they act a lot like a B2B organization, in fact, from the standpoint of having sales. So I look at that as a sales-driven revenue model, regardless. Now, on the same token, if it's easy to buy and get started and it's easy to see the value, then, chances are you're going to be selling it through an e-com channel. It's going to be largely marketing-driven revenue. And again, it doesn't matter whether or not it's, a consumer play or a business play. An old time example for me is Yammer. They completely disrupted the platform business, the social business platform business that Jive was in, by making it so easy to buy and so easy to see the value. But they were a B2B play. So when we think about those traditional models, they're always important to come back to because so much of the world thinks of it that way. But we'll also be tapping in and talking about how is it that B2B and B2C sometimes really overlap in the tactics that you use. Next slide. And understanding whether you are fitting a sales-driven revenue model, a marketing-driven revenue model, this platform play or growth hacking, it all drives marketing's role, the focus, the team that you build, the skills that you need, and the budgets that you have. And then I'm just going to share one last super important fundamental. And this dates back, if any of you ever heard of the .com, .bust era, you'll recognize this little sock puppet dude down there. That was our biggest problem. We didn't follow this rule. Your CAC cannot be greater than the lifetime value of a customer. It's just an out of balance business model. You'll never make any money. And CAC is that customer acquisition cost. And guess what? Marketing plus sales, we are that customer acquisition cost. What you want to do is ensure that your lifetime value is always greater than the amount you're spending to acquire that customer. So we'll talk a lot about that as well, and how you make sure that you have a balanced business model all the way from top to bottom. All right, I'm going to stop. I'm going to turn it over to you, Vic, now to drive us home.
Thank you. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the go-to-market strategy, which in our course is really the final piece. And we bring all the pieces that we will, the core marketing pieces, the demand creation, into a framework that is a clear blueprint of actions. So a go-to-market strategy is defined as an action plan that specifies how a company will reach customers and achieve competitive advantage. The purpose of a GTM strategy is to provide for a blueprint for delivering a product or service to the end customer, taking into account factors such as pricing and distribution. In other words, it's really a program for your customer to say, hey, I would like to buy something from you. And also the experience that you would like for your customer to have, from the click that will get you the customer, all the way to the renewal process. How easy is it for that customer to get to you and to help you generate the revenue that you're needed?
Yeah. And one of the things I'll add on why we have put so much emphasis on understanding how to create a go-to-market plan in the program, it's actually twofold. First of all, it is often the first thing someone asks you, well, what is your go-to-market, strategy? What's the plan that you have? And then kind of sit back and you go, well, I better go figure out what that is. But the other thing is, I have actually worked in a number of organizations now where the go-to-market strategy was build it and they will come. And that can sometimes work for a short period of time, but then all of a sudden, when the numbers aren't there and people are looking for where the numbers are, whether that's number of users or the revenue, you end up in a situation where it was, I guess I have to go back now and create that strategy.
Mm-hmm. And we do measure we do treasure what we measure. And a lot of entrepreneurial marketing is about that. It's the analytics and making decisions based on the numbers that come back. And if this particular way to sell a product, it does not work, or this particular way of pricing something doesn't work, we have to go back to the planning to come up with the second, perhaps, 2.0 of your go-to-market strategy. How an organization will benefit from go-to-market strategy is both internal and external. It's a internal-facing activity where whether it is engineering, R&D, sales, and marketing, all have to understand where we're going with this thing. And it's also an external because you have to include your customers into thinking about how they would situate your products, as we are inundated with so many products these days, to put it into a place where they can draw back to perhaps long-term memory that will draw out when perhaps they're looking for that particular product or service. So some of the things that I like to highlight is that it helps establish your path for growth. It maximizes your competitive opportunity, and it's very iterative. So it's not that we just make one plan and go with it, but we will continue to revisit the same plan so that it will reduce your time to market. It reduces costs, as we're all short of time and money. And it increases the ability for us to adapt to change, to have a clear communication also externally. So some of the key questions in the go-to-market would be, well, what is the market you want to pursue? What is your target audience? Who are the customers you're going to be selling to? What are some of the personas? How do they behave? What is their demographic? And what is your offering? Probably one of the most important questions is, how would you create value for your customers? What are you selling? And the next question is, what are the channels that will get you to the customers? We looked at the various different ways and different business models, whether it's a B2B, B2B to C to D, there are so many different ways that we can distribute this product these days. We have to think thoroughly about what those channels may be in terms of sales and distribution, creating demand, but also, as Lynda had said, if we cannot keep a customer, how do we provide customer service to also be able to keep the customers that we acquire? And pricing is a very big topic. We're going to spend one session on it, probably not going to be enough, but pricing is how much you would charge the customer, how would you maybe shift it based on the size of your deal. There are so many questions that we have to answer in order for us to have a well thought out go-to-market strategy. And last but not least, obviously, how do you position your market? How do you position your product in the marketplace? What is your unique value proposition? How do you differentiate from other products that are very similar? And potentially, how do you have maybe co-opetition? We'll spend a little bit of time in our quarter to talk about that as well.
And so if you take the Global Entrepreneurial Marketing Program, the way we have structured the series of lectures and topics is actually to take you through everything that you need to answer all those questions that Vic just went through. If you decide not to take the program, well, now you have the questions you need to answer to create your go-to-market approach. So hopefully that will provide some instant value for you.
Excellent. The go-to-market strategy is really a time and space exercise. When you first introduce the product, it's going to have a certain set of answers to the questions we just posed. And the growth phase, obviously, that's very, very important. And when you get to the maturity phase, and then perhaps you might want to pivot, and as your product declines into a phase where you don't need as much marketing, and you may want to consider other products and services to supplement. As Salesforce, as you can imagine, they at first were going to be no software, but now they have totally embraced this platform business. They go through the Trailblazers and Dreamforce activities that they do now. And of course, there are potentially two ways that you can look at the various markets that you want to market. And for each of these, you must also answer all those questions that we had just posed. Who is your target? Who are your customers? What is that pricing going to be? How are you going to reach them? And how are you going to sustain them? Okay, with that, should we open it up for questions? Yeah. Lynda, do you have anything else to add?
No, I just say, the Global Entrepreneurial Marketing Program, I think, is a super fun program. There's a lot of opportunity for you to really dig in and learn, not only from what we provide, the presenters that come in, as well as your fellow students. And if it's important to you to have the right go-to-market strategy, again, whether you're a brand new startup or you're trying to bring something new out from a more mature company, I think you're going to learn what you need from us.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you both, Victor and Lynda, for this fascinating brief and a very fast overview of so many interesting concepts. I'd like to open with questions coming from our audience, talking about the early days of new ventures. And specifically, a question came in from a participant who's wondering, how do you convince a highly technical founder, a CEO who happens to have a PhD in electrical engineering, how do you convince an individual like that coming from hardcore scientific background to invest in marketing? How would you go about doing that?
Yeah, I can definitely jump in on that one. Been there, done that multiple times now. So there are a number of ways that it happens. First of all, if you're already there in the company and you're trying to convince them it's now time, because of the way that technical founder is thinking, you have to bring facts to them. You have to, build a case, if you will, that shows the why behind it. And working with engineers and developers, that's one of the key things I always do. Is I always try to answer the why behind why we need to do it. So part of it is building up that case for why it's important now at this juncture in the company. It's also about earning their trust, though. And, as I said, one of my goals in the program is to get over the perception people have of marketing's just fluff and it's a waste of time, so that they really understand how it can benefit that business. And earning that trust with the technical founder is super important. That you understand the product, that you understand the market, that you've talked to the customers. And so what you're really representing is something that he can trust, or she can trust, I should say, as well. I'll tell you, the other way it happens, very honestly, is if it's a company that's already gone out and it's got angel investors, Series A, maybe sometimes even as late as Series B, the VCs will definitely push on that. There will be a point where they say, you need to get someone in here who knows marketing. And what will oftentimes drive that is that the numbers aren't making it. The projections aren't there, and they realize that the product itself is not just going to bring the people in. So there's the do it internally, build the trust, answer the why, or it will come from the outside.
To that end, also, in my experience, technical co-founders often, you can appeal them through logic. And basically, if you have a lot of customer stories that can help illustrate the point of we do need to do marketing. I've had a lot of investors breathing down my neck, and frankly, I was not a technical founder or co-founder, but we did realize very quickly that we had to bring somebody in for marketing because the metrics just didn't show that we were growing or we're not selling the product in the way that we had planned for it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. My next question is about social media, and specifically with social media being so prevalent in today's world, does it make sense to launch marketing activities on social media before the product or service is ready to launch? And if so, would you also do it in an organic fashion or a paid fashion? And perhaps you can talk about when do you start investing in social media?
Okay, maybe I'll take a stab at it first. In a lot of my startups, I basically would allocate a very small amount of money just to do product validation. Does anybody want this thing beyond my group of friends, so to speak? And once you establish a little bit of that, I think with social media, it is not a very costly way to just get early validation of your products and services. And at which point, maybe you can be quite smart about collecting data. For instance, you may start offering this product or service to a certain group and watch those metrics. And maybe open it up for discussion. Say, hey, you guys are the early users. What would you change about this? What do you love about this? And what do you hate about this? So I do think that marketing would not be marketing without social media or any kind of social platform. Lynda?
Yeah, I think what I would add to that is my first response to the individual would be, well, who is your target audience? Because in my experience, social media has different roles to play for a company. It will always be there. But there are some audiences that you just can't reach through social media. It's not where they live. It's not where they get their information. And so using social media for that type of a target audience, it's just not going to be effective. There are other audiences where it's like, yeah, that is where they hang out. And you get down to the particular social media vehicle, be it a Facebook or Twitch TV, or you figure out what the right vehicles are. The other thing, and this kind of plays off what Vic was saying, you also in a social media strategy need to define what your objectives are. And what Vic was really talking about is figuring out from almost that kind of market research perspective of, do you have that right product market fit? Are you getting the right features into the product? You may find that social, if that's not where they live, from a perspective of learning and demand creation, that social for you is a channel for customer support. And that's really where it sits. So when I look at a startup and do you use social or not, first thing I do is go back to who's the target audience, and is this where they live in terms of getting information, being persuaded to move through that hierarchy of effects. Then I sit back and say, okay, what do we really want to accomplish with social, which could be market validation, or it could be customer support, or it could be that demand creation. Then I go out and figure out what are the right tactics.
Thank you. My next question has to do with moving from the early days to the growth phase. And we mentioned earlier that generalists are golden in the early days. When do you know the time to start hiring for technical expertise in marketing?
Lynda?
Yeah. So, first of all, one of the immediate signals that I see in a company that it is time to bring on marketing is the fact that they're looking at what the next growth numbers are going to be, and they do an internal assessment and they realize, okay, it's either going to take more bandwidth than when we've been able to put forward to it, because we've had a person doing that plus their day job, or they realize that they don't have the specific expertise in the area of marketing they need. Let's take an example. If a company is going to drive heavy e-commerce interaction, if that is the model that they've picked, chances are they're going to need someone that's heavy into digital, heavy into analytics. And if they look around the room and they don't have that, then that's going to tell them, it's time to hire. The other thing, that I would say is in terms of technical, and you can look at technical different ways. One of the mistakes that I do see companies make is that they will be a technical product and they don't hire a technical resource within marketing. And by that, I mean, I just helped a company that I advise put in their CMO, and it is a product that's being sold to engineers, particularly in the QA space. And we needed to have someone that came from that background to actually be able to do the marketing effort. So the gentleman has stepped in, engineering background, has had to run QA before, wanted to do marketing. So his whole career has been in marketing, but he comes with that level of technical expertise.
Yeah, well, exactly what Lynda said, plus a little bit more that I'd like to add is that when marketing is not just something that happens, it's not an activity that needs to be looked at on a contingency basis, meaning that maybe once a week we look at metrics, to, hey, we've got to be looking at metrics every hour. That's when you really need to bring in a professional to manage that and to make sense of what's really happening.
Excellent. And that cues the next question regarding metrics and data and the LTV versus the customer acquisition cost. How do you make sure to do the definition and the measuring of the customer acquisition cost in the early days when data is not readily available, right? How do you guide the management team as you come in with a recommendation, whether it be a certain dollar amount or a percent of budget? How do you deal with those questions?
Yeah, it's never easy. The reality is, in the earliest days, you are dealing with that lack of data. So there are different ways that you can approach it. First of all, you can look to see if there are companies that are similar to yours or selling in the same product category, and what has the traditional CAC been for them, traditional lifetime value been for them. An example was I was working with a company that was in a high-end electronics product space. And we were able to go out and just research online, what the average CAC was for selling a high-end electronics product via the e-com channel. So there is that kind of data out there that you can tap into in the early days. Also, you can do a bottoms-up approach, which is look at all the vehicles that you want to use and what the rough price of that would be. And that will start giving you an idea of what the cost of acquisition would be from the pure marketing perspective. And if it's sales-driven revenue, then you also would bring in what is the cost of having the sales team on board. Is that one person, two people? And so you can do some bottom-up calculations in the early days as well.
In the early days, it's kind of like art and science. It's a lot of art and creativeness that gives you some signals. Some things that have worked for me personally is going into communities and talk to other founders in your own space. And they can give you some guidance. It's not science, but it is some guidance.
Excellent, thank you. Another set of questions are coming regarding innovation in marketing. And I wonder if from your very strategic perch, you can share with us some of the innovative approaches to marketing that you've recently seen, and how would that be, how do people know to identify these next innovations in marketing that can often give companies a competitive advantage as they compete against their peer competitors, right?
Well, I think that the biggest thrust that I've seen as of late in marketing, that's kind of the next wave, is everything around analytics. And there are a lot of companies now that are leveraging AI and deep learning because they've got the data around their customers. And I know AI is a way overused term. It has so many different meanings out there today. But it's really this idea of leveraging all the data you have around you. That can give you a huge competitive advantage over someone else if you learn how to harness that data and put it to work.
Yeah, I'd like to bring that also home to the fact that we are, marketing is a multidiscipline approach to being both a behavioral scientist to psychology. So your customers will be human beings, so that data will help inform, but at the end of the day, designing these experiences will potentially help you get a competitive edge.
Thank you. The next question is around the perhaps tension between product management, product marketing, and marketing. Product management in recent years has come to the front in terms of involvement in organization. Are there tensions built in between marketing team and product marketing, product management? Who owns the go-to-market plan? Is the product management? Is it product marketing? How do the various individuals in these roles work best together?
I'll take a stab at this. It's a very complex question, and it's different with every stage of an organization. In the early stages, there will not be distinct, product management to program management to other aspects of the team. But as you grow, again, I truly believe that a go-to-market strategy is a plan that's internally facing and externally facing. And everyone pretty much has to own a piece, if not all of it, being cognizant that what I do today will affect what you do tomorrow. Lynda?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do also with the players that you've hired in the company. Where you have a strong leader in marketing, the CMO, the VP of marketing, wherever the title level is, if they believe in this construct of marketing is an end-to-end process, they're going to step in and take it over and own the go-to-market because they get how that is directly tied to what they do at every stage. So I think that strength of leadership in the marketing area drives a lot of that. If that marketing leader that you've hired is more of a demand creation person, that's really where their sweet spot is, that's what they wake up and love to do, then chances are it'll be someone else in the organization, maybe the head of product management, that takes on that umbrella of, I want to own the go-to-market. Sometimes it's even the CEO or the founder in a young company. In terms of that friction node, which is kind of a second question under the question of between product management and product marketing, what I have found is that, if product management and product marketing can really form a team relationship, which they need to, then you can get away from there being any problems between the two organizations. If there is a dynamic where product management feels that they're kind of uber important because they're driving how a product is built and they're working with engineering, and that product marketing is just kind of this afterthoughts, the fluffy part, then you're going to have problems. And so again, you have that opportunity through organizational design to make sure you avoid that problem.
And also in MSNE, we've seen a lot of students who go into marketing, and with that analytics background, it's quite useful for them to have the same language moving forward.
Excellent. Well, I would like to wrap up by asking both of you to talk about the individuals for whom this course is appropriate. Who should be taking this course really? As you look at your experience teaching it before and teaching here at Stanford in general, who extracts value out of it, and what should they expect to get out of it? Of course, we covered all of the material today, but how do we answer that question?
I believe the people who get the most out of this course are really people who have had very little exposure to marketing. If you have had a role in marketing, or you've taken marketing courses in the GSB or a business school, there you will have incremental knowledge versus oh my gosh, all these aha moments.
Yeah, and to chime off on that, I get very excited by the students that we've had in the program in the past that are now in companies, and they'll come back and say, wow, I learned so much during that program. I've been able to actually really apply it, and had I not gone through GEM, I never would have had really any exposure to marketing. Those are the ones that seem to come out and are most excited about what they learned. If you've had one marketing class, I think we can definitely build on it. But to Vic's point, if you're someone who already has a marketing degree, or you've been working 15 years in the field, we probably can't go deep enough in any of the topics to give you what you're really looking for.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And certainly we have not been able to answer all the questions that were asked in today's webinar, but we will follow up with some answers from you. We typically collate the questions that are submitted and both Victoria and Lynda will get back to us with specific answers.
Yeah, fantastic questions, by the way. I've been watching them rolling in, and it's been very hard not to jump in and answer those actually right here by text.
Yes, and thank you so much, Lynda and Greg, for joining us today.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Presentation.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you, everyone.